Inside took the gaming world by storm, with its interesting abstract story, drop-dead gorgeous visuals, and animations as smooth as that oil-up pig you elegantly slide off early in the game. Oh yeah. All of this is beyond impressive, but what's even more so is how the game manages to accomplish all of this without any dialogue. And since I'm in the neighborhood, I thought it would be fun to find out how Inside managed to pull off this silent side-scrolling masterpiece. So, let's take a look at how Inside designs without dialogue. A narrative device unique to games is environmental storytelling. What we see in frame can craft a compelling chronicle and give insight on this new mysterious world. It's pretty much required in modern games nowadays, but especially for one that conveys basically everything visually, it's imperative that it's done well. One aspect of environmental storytelling is mise-en-scène, which does a lot to visually set a tone, and Inside's mise-en-scène is nothing short of beautiful, if not a little wet pants inducing. From the first frame of the game, we're introduced to a world that feels a little off. The dark, suffocating forest is penetrated only by a single beam of light that brings our main character into the scene, light being a tool that is heavily used by Inside that we'll focus on later. The color palette is cold and lifeless, the world is dark with the void of the background wrapping around our character, and we look minuscule in comparison to the monstrous appendage like trees. In a matter of seconds, completely through visuals, we understand that this world is scary, even dominating, and that we're no match for what lies ahead, which we learn to be 100% true when we stumble down a hill and see this in the background. According to Jeremy Peterman, one of the two designated artists that worked on Inside's environments, this specific moment served a major role in the story. The moment the antagonist's activities are revealed is purely about storytelling. It's a key point, a realization of what the boy is up against. It took about a dozen iterations to get to a balance between explicitness and ambiguity, and that's what makes Inside so scary. Ambiguity. All of its fear is rooted in the unknown. Barely anything is explained, which both hooks and scares the player. The game's subtlety is a key component of its ambiguity. Notice how we're introduced to our enemies not through a raging battle or a direct conversation, but from our surroundings. Through the use of background, Inside is able to communicate to the player aspects of the world that help build a narrative and establish an interesting history that we want to learn more about. We see this utilized throughout the game, from exploring destroyed cities with lines of mind-controlled citizens on our left, to seeing humans in cages being carted off. We piece together the story of a dystopian nightmare that even Blade Runner himself couldn't survive. I haven't seen the movie yet, okay? Sue me. Of course, it also helps that the story is meant to be ambiguous, so it has the option to be very conservative with what it chooses to tell the player directly, something much more inclined to wordless storytelling. But the player isn't passively observing every scary situation from the comfort of the foreground, as the game puts us right in the action, and through gameplay, is able to give us even more interesting information about the world. For example, that section in the city we talked about a second ago. Eventually, the player is forced to get in line with the other zombies. A robot flashes its light right on us as we have to try and blend in with the horde. And in between thoughts of, oh shit, oh god, oh fuck, I messed that up, we're thinking, what could possibly be going on here? What is the goal of this corporation? What happened to these people? In other words, through interacting with the world, we receive new information about it that, again, crafts a terrifying and interesting atmosphere which progresses the story in its own unique, abstract way. We never feel secure in gameplay, but the mystery of the story keeps us going, and whether it's done through interacting with or observing the environment, the visual storytelling present is undoubtedly masterful. But at the end of the day, this is still a game with levels, ones I want to play and have a grand old time while doing so. And luckily, Inside has some fantastic levels, not in spite of, but because of the hands-off approach to level design that comes with limited dialogue. Similar to the environmental storytelling, Inside uses the background in multiple ways to achieve success in its level design, either in the form of antagonistic forces springing from the second plane, or puzzle being interactive with both the foreground and the background. We can see this as early as the intro level, where a moment after that truck scene we come across two guards, one of whom is holding a flashlight that shines directly at the player. Our character begins crouching, and there's a perfectly placed hunk of metal to hide behind, signaling to us that we can be spotted by this light. And if we are, well, have fun being Santa's newest helper. As the intro continues, we see more instances of light being used as an antagonist, something we should avoid at all costs that beams from the background. But light isn't nearly as evil as dogs that run up from the background and into the foreground that always have me screaming at my screen to run faster. One fantastic use of the dogs is seen later in the game, when one comes sprinting out of the shadows and you have to time your jumps over a chain link fence to slowly break down this boarded up doorway. The dogs run between the foreground and the background as they chase you around the fence, forcing you to pay attention to every aspect of your surroundings. This acts as a puzzle and little action sequence at the same time, but what about strictly puzzles? A lot of Inside is spent jogging around, finding secrets, and solving problems with the environment like a mystery gang member, and you guessed it, the background is incorporated into these swimmingly. Take this one early in the game, for instance, where you have to declog a pig in order to connect yourself to the suction cup device to control the zombies in the background. Through altering a different plane in this level, you're able to get past an obstacle in your way. It creates a feeling of unity and dynamism that has you constantly looking at your surroundings, which makes the player focus on the environmental storytelling to create a beautiful cycle of progression in both gameplay and narrative at the same time. The best part of this is that it's all instinctual. You see an enemy with a light and you hide. You see a dog running up behind you from the background, you immediately put foot to pavement and bolt out of there. Even better, the game lets you restart if you die without penalty. So even if your instincts kick in a second too late, you're still able to have that satisfying aha moment and get right back into the action. The game doesn't directly tell you anything, rather using subtle visual cues that the player immediately recognizes. One of these that we've already slightly discussed, but as there's much more time to spotlight, is, well, spotlights. Lighting is Inside's most prominent form of telegraphing information to the player. Similar to the use of backgrounds, we see two uses of lighting: as a force of antagonism, and as a guide. We already talked a bit about how lights are used as an enemy. We've discussed how light is associated with bad guys, whether it's highlighting an enemy in the background or being controlled by one. There are also moments where spotlights are used as obstacles you have to avoid. However, this does more than simply tell the player to hide, as through avoiding light, the game can teach the player. Looking back at the intro level, we see the lights from the enemies guiding us into new situations in order to teach us new mechanics. For example, in this scene where there's a car in the background chasing us down with, you got it, a spotlight. However, if we keep running, we're met with a less than stellar fate. Upon restarting, or if you're a little smarty pants and did this on the first try, you'll notice that the structure you fall off is hollow, and with the light coming in on the right, the player is guided towards the left side of the screen for the first time. Meaning, through avoiding the light, we were taught that to solve our problems, we may have to do a little more exploring than just moving right. We're taught how to swim in a similar way, where after diving off a cliff we land in some water and a searchlight is shining on the surface, visually telling the player to dive and experiment with the swimming mechanics for the first time. Clearly, avoiding light is a massive driver for the game in the ways it guides the player, creates tense situations, and teaches us new mechanics. But Inside also wants us to follow the light just as much as it wants us to cower from it. This is most often seen in how the game telegraphs puzzles to its players. And this little puzzle in the farm is a perfect example. When walking up the path, there are spotlights lighting the way forward. Notice how they highlight that cute little pile of dead pigs over there. That's a taste of the environmental storytelling we were talking about earlier, while guiding the player forward. Quite economical. Regardless, we walk up to the barn door, where we see a slightly lit open window, and with the farm being cast in shadow, the previous spotlight is able to illuminate the object the game wants us to interact with: the rope. Again, we're taught a game mechanic through lighting and telegraphing. Upon fumbling into the farm, we're greeted with the machine with, you guessed it, a spotlight smack dab on top of it. We also see light on the other side of the wall that doubles as a goal for the player while providing a highlight for another key object of interaction: the bale of hay above us. And if we walk to our left after activating the machine, we see a lamp illuminating the doorway that we have to open to bring in the little chicks to send them careening towards the hay at Mach speeds in order to knock it down and complete the puzzle. Although this is a simple analysis of one of Inside's easier puzzles, it clearly shows how the game guides the player through puzzles with absolutely no hand-holding. You are told completely through visuals where every piece of the puzzle is, and it's up to you to use these pieces to figure it out. Because the game is so hands-off in its approach to multiple aspects of level design, it feels fluid and satisfying to play. Even getting caught and dying feels okay because I know that it's my fault I didn't avoid the light. Been a while since I felt so many aha moments consistently spread out through a game, and I firmly believe a lot of this has to do with the game giving the player freedom in going about the world, but not so much that we ever get lost. Inside proves that games don't need to be riddled with dialogue or nailed down with concrete story beats to be interesting. In fact, Inside's lack of dialogue is what makes it one of the most unique games I've played in recent memory. It uses this interesting choice to its fullest potential, and the result is a beautifully free, mysterious, and satisfying game that feels more like an interactive experience than anything else. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.